Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here from DLA Ignites. I'm the CEO and co-founder. With me today, I've got social media royalty. I've got Neal Schaefer with us today. And Neal, if you didn't know, is the author. This is his new book, The Age of Influence. If you haven't got one, then you need to go out and get one. So, Neal, it's great to have you. Other side of the world. Where can people get hold of you? Where can people find you on social?
Well, I am Neal Schaefer on social everywhere. There's a few Schaefers out there, so I'm the real Neal, right? So Neal Schaffer everywhere on social. NealSchaefer.com. My book, The Age of Influence, is available everywhere, online, offline. And also I have my own podcast called the Maximize Your Social Influence podcast, if you're a podcast listener.
And I always realize that you're a Neal.
Oh, yeah.
Schaefer, yeah.
I've gotten into fistfights over that. I tell you, the Starbucks baristas, NIEL and KNEEL and
So Neal, why did you write a book on influencer marketing? I'm an author as well, and it's like, why did you pick that subject?
And Tim, we've known each other for probably a decade, and I began. My first two books were all about LinkedIn, and that was more based on my professional background, being primarily B2B sales with some marketing biz dev. In 2010, I launched my social media marketing consultancy. And since then, content from my perspective is all about serving my customers. So when I wrote my third book, Maximize Your Social, it was really about sharing that consulting business that I launched in 2010 of really helping businesses that couldn't hire me to do it on their own, right? Read the book, learn how to measure your social media marketing ROI, create a strategy, what have you. So a few years after that, I created something called the Social Tool Summit, which was, I started getting lots of questions about the technology, the tools. And the summit was great. We did it for 2 years, had 4 events. And since then, not that I was looking for a book to write, but I noticed that as I spoke, I started getting a lot of questions about influencers, and not just influencer marketing, but marketers who were saying, Neal, how can I also become an influencer? So this led me to do a test market for the idea on a Kickstarter-like site. And there was a lot of resonance. I think it was something that a lot of people were trying to figure out. And as I did a little bit more research, I realized that there was a gap between what I saw as the power of influencer marketing and the way that it's been really really marketers haven't learned to think what it is, are two completely different things. And that influencer marketing really, it's not something new that was born just for TikTok. It actually ties into a lot of the elements that I had already been talking about for years. And I really wanted to share that with marketers. I began to get a passion for the subject, began to be speaking more about it. And now with the book out, it gives me the opportunity to hopefully re-educate, in my words, marketers so that they can leverage this potential that influencer marketing has.
And I've read the book and I think it's fantastic. If you don't know anything about influencer marketing or you're thinking about doing it, it's the book to read. And there's so much, I'll be polite, rubbish on social media about what it is and what it isn't.
Absolutely.
What in your view, Neal, what do you think is influencer marketing?
Well, and it's funny, Tim, because probably after you wrote your book on social selling, you continue to evolve your thoughts, right? And if you were to write that book today, it would be even more advanced.
It would be, I could write not a second edition of it. I could write a second book of it.
Right. So that's already this way with my book, because the more you speak and the more you work with companies on it, the more you evolve. So, I think the biggest, the way to look at influencers is if we look at how marketers have looked at influencers. Oh, you're going to work with Kim Kardashian, or, the example of TikTok of Charli D'Amelio, who's become this star who just turned 16. And these people are not social media influencers, they're celebrities, right? And I think this is the distinction, that a lot of marketers, when they think of influencers, think of them as celebrities rather than other people out there in social media that have some digital influence. And I say that because even in the influencer marketing industry in the book, as I talked about, they start to look at people with less and less of a following because they're more authentic. they're more engaged with their community. There's less of a chance they bought fake followers, what have you. So even in this Instagram-centric influencer marketing industry, they talk about nano influencers, or people that just have 1,000 followers. So when you get down to that level, who is it around you? And I use the brand affinity model, right? It's not about the number of followers. It's about the number of people out there that know, like, and trust your company, that might have a community that's relevant, right? And more important, it's not that they just have a community. It's that they actually know, like, and trust your brand. They actually want to collaborate with you. And in the book, I talk about, the traditional way of looking at influencers is treating them as celebrities, of trying to find people with the most followers, rather than look at people that have the most brand affinity for you. So for me, that starts with employees. And Tim, with social selling, we've always had employee advocacy. It's been around, and it really has gone nowhere, because I don't think companies treated employees as influencers, right?
No.
Where it did well was where the salespeople were reading your book and were really savvy, and they were the biggest promoters, but it never got sort of company-wide traction. And, we look at influencers in two ways. We look at them as having a community, even as small as 1,000 followers, that can help your business. But it's not just the amplification content. And I think since I've written the book, we're also seeing this boom in working with influencers just for content creation, right? It's saying, I want to work with Tim. I'm Salesforce. I want to work with Tim. And yes, it would be great to tap into Tim's community, but Tim is a great presenter. Tim is a great content creator. We want him to write our blog post going forward, or we want him to start presenting at conferences using the Salesforce Advisor title. These are the things that companies are looking more and more to do. So when you look at it that way, there's even more opportunities to leverage. And I started talking about your own employees. It could be your customers, your fans, your followers, people that mention you. If there are people out there that have some brand affinity, that have some following, and they're active, they're a content creator, and they see an alignment and they want to work with you, these are the people that I believe companies should be working with. And now it's funny, Tim, since the publication of the book, I see a lot more, agencies say, Neal, we're starting to see a shift of companies, instead of using these celebrities for one-time transactions, they're now starting to create more of what we would call a brand ambassador program, a long-term program of a large pool of people that have some sort of brand affinity. And within them, sure, there are people with more brand affinity, or there are people that have more followers, and they have tiers where they manage them according to different things. But this is really the mindset that organic, and Tim, I know when you came over to teach at the Rutgers Business School social selling program, we had a long conversation about organic versus paid.
Yeah.
But if organic social media is a necessity, it doesn't deliver the viral word of mouth that brands want from it, like it did 5, 6, 7 years ago. Now, there are exceptions. I know that LinkedIn company pages actually perform quite well, better than Facebook fan pages. Instagram, you might still get some mileage. But at the end of the day, the best way to get word of mouth about your brand is through people who rule the algorithms, right? And that's really the heart of influencer marketing, is inciting word of mouth by collaborating with people who can help your brand for whatever objective you might have. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think, I've had two approaches this week. One was somebody saying, could you like my article? It's like, okay, right. Why? And they said, you're a trusted influencer. And it's like, yeah, but your article's like technical. Why would I like your article? I'm not, and the reason why I'm a trusted influencer is people trust me to support what I believe in, not your article, which quite often when people ask you to do that, they find it very difficult to understand why I just don't like it. And the other was basically a big corporation saying that they wanted me to promote a conference, which again is like, why would I do that? Because if they want, but they did say we are looking to have a long-term relationship. Well, I don't mind if you want to have a long-term relationship. For me, it's important that I have integrity. My followers think I'm having integrity. And I know you get this as well, which is, every day people wake up and go, I'm going to unfollow Tim Hughes. It's the world's best democracy. And if I start putting, someone contacted me and said, can I buy tweets? And I said, yeah, they're $1 million each. And they never came back, that was the point. Because if they bought 5 and I got $5 million, well, I didn't need to work again, did I? So, hey, so how do you?
And I want to talk about that just for 1 second, because I actually have a podcast episode, when to know when to start monetizing your influence. And if anybody listening are getting those sorts of pings, you are thought of as an influencer by someone else, right? But more importantly, this speaks to the way that businesses fail at doing this, because they impose. It's like, if I was going to contact, I don't know, Elon Musk for the first time, would I ask him to share one of my tweets? Of course not. This is the mindset that brands should have, because that person that contacted Timothy Hughes asking for a like, he's going to get blocked. I block those people regularly, right? So you're trying to reach out to influencers that you want help from, that you want to have long-term relationships with, yet you don't even have an open. You're assuming that they want to do this for you. You don't know WIFM, what's in it for them. And this is the big mistake, where brands lose credibility with influencers, and they lose opportunities of developing relationships, because they didn't start with, Tim, we love your work. We've been following you for a while. That blog post on such and such, that was incredible. We have a program where we work with influencers like yourself. There's a lot of different ways in which we might be able to collaborate. Do you work with brands? And if so, are you open to a phone conversation? It's a sale. And I think when you realize it is a sale, you're not going to convert everybody. You start treating it a little bit differently. So sorry for jumping in there, Tim. I know you were going to go.
No, I think it's a really good point. It's a really good point, Neal. Which is, and the thing that I always say is that the brands have to understand that the influencer is more important than them, and that's the point of influencer marketing. And unfortunately, what happens is the brand comes to the influencer and seems to have this arrogant view that they're more important than the influencer, which is disingenuous, actually, to the situation. So my question was: so how do you find influencers?
So if we stick at the the brand affinity model, right? First of all, who are your customers? This is the most important thing for every influencer. We want to convert them into a brand advocate. Do we already have brand advocates out there? Do we already have people out there in social that are already sharing our content, that are already talking about us? So these are really the first areas to look. There are, and I believe they are GPDR compliant, but you'll have to check. There are what we would call email enrichment services. So you can take your customer email list and enrich it with social data to see the Instagram profiles, the LinkedIn profiles, the Twitter profiles of your customers, and see if, try to match, are they the ones that are talking about you or not, right? So that's one area. Obviously, talk to your community manager. Who are our biggest fans in social media? You begin to look at, if you use a social listening tool, you begin to look at social mentions a little bit differently. Are influencers talking about us? And if you have a PR department, they probably already have a list of influencers in the industry or people that have already talked about you. I think this is really the best place to start. Obviously, your employees as well. And, yes, you might have a minimum threshold of 1,000 followers, because if the people are not, number one, creating content, and number two, building a community, then their influence is not as high as it could be, right? So have a threshold, but from there, you're going to be able to create a list of a lot of people. And here's, I know we have a lot of social selling people listening in. So if you go, how do you find socially active employees? So if you go to LinkedIn Sales Navigator, for those smart people who have the product, and you do a search for any company, you can actually see who from that company an employee has posted in the last 30 days. And then boom, right there, you have a feel as to who are these socially active employees that you could reach out to if LinkedIn's important. And Tim, we all know that LinkedIn is one place where employees are more willing to participate, because it is a professional place, rather than, I don't want to do this on my Instagram or on my Facebook because I keep it personal, right? So that's why I mentioned that. So there are a number of ways. There's no, just like anything else in life, there's no one golden tool that's going to do all this for you. There are tools out there that will help you with the social listening and with maybe finding your fans on Twitter, what have you. But, I don't think it's rocket science. It just takes a little bit of time. But if you think about, you're trying to create a program and relationships with people that are very influential, you want to take the time. Sometimes when you use a tool, it comes up with results and you don't know where they found them, or are these people really appropriate? So I think that manual vetting, that this manual process, at least at the beginning, I think is really important, and manually looking at their profiles. And maybe they used a hashtag, like let's use the Salesforce example. Maybe they talked about Salesforce once, right? But really, they're all about whatever. They're all about like analytics, and they're not even related to Salesforce. Maybe of their last 100 tweets, they mentioned Salesforce once because they had a problem. This is someone that doesn't talk about Salesforce often, right? They talk about something completely different, meaning that their community is interested in something different, and therefore it's probably not a natural alignment. So these are the things to look for. But yeah, there are tools, there are ways of looking, and hopefully this gives everyone listening a head start on how to begin the process.
I remember at my previous company, they gave out a list of influencers you need to connect to. And one of them was a guy called Rory Ketland-Jones. He's a BBC journalist. And at no point, because he's a BBC journalist, at no point would he ever be able to be influenced by the company that he was going to buy some stuff. So it was a waste of time him being on the list. But it's a good example. So I'm trying to. So in your book, you actually talk about different mechanisms. Yes, the 16 different ways to collaborate with influencers. Obviously, I don't want you to do all 16, and you probably can't remember all 16 because I can't remember. I sometimes have a great empathy with Mick Jagger and Keith Richards because I don't remember much of the content of my book. I don't know why, but because it's so intense in the way that you write it. But give us an example about what good outreach is about.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot in this very, very short episode of a lot of sort of, if you're doing an influencer marketing program, you need to redefine who an influencer is. You need to know how to identify them, right? So really that next step is, okay, well, what are we going to do with them? How are we going to collaborate with them? So I created a chapter in the book because as I was doing research and case studies, I realized that there were 15, 16, 17 different sort of types of collaborations where most of these case studies fit. And because more my sales sort of no bullocks, no fluff background is, why don't we just simplify it? And, here are 16, 70 different types just to get you started and, find the type that works for you. So I think now fast forward after the book's been published, definitely some of these of the 16 or 17 we see worked on more than others. So I'll just give a few that I think are really important. Number one being the concept of gifting product. So if you want to incite word of mouth about your brand, then you need to have people need to use your product. Otherwise, they're not going to talk about you. And in order to do that, you need to seed them with product. So we've seen this happen now that we're at the nano influencer level where a lot of people will post on social media just for product. They're very happy to get hold of your product. We see this in B2B as well. Hey, we're going to give you access to our software. We'd love if you tried it out and if you liked it to share it on social, whatever it is. So that's the easiest way that doesn't necessarily cost money. And we especially see this in content creation. So if you're a B2C brand and your visual content just sucks, it just cannot compete with what other content creators out there are creating. Why not get content created for you by shipping product to influencers who don't get paid to publish the content, but just to send their lifestyle, Instagramish photos back to you for you to post with a contract that says you own the copyright to those images. So this has become very, very popular over the last 12 months as well, using influencers for content creation. If you have e-commerce, obviously using influencers, not just this concept of affiliate marketing, but actually offering a discount that they can offer their community. You want to have a win-win-win where you win, the influencer wins, and their community wins. And having a 50% off discount code that influencers can share, it serves their community and it allows you to measure their performance as well. Because if you work with 10 different influencers, the performance is going to be very, very different by influencer. And this is going to help you figure out which influencers to invest more time and money in the future. Now, these are more, they're relevant to B2B, more to B2C. When we get to B2B, it really becomes about content, right? And there's just so many ways to work with influencers on the B2B side with content. Whether it's podcast, whether it's YouTube, whether it's blog, whether they guest post for you, you guest post for them, you do a co-creation, you do a roundup blog post. Including influencers in your content is a natural, because the idea is that they're going to share it with their network once it's published. And that's why these roundup blog posts, Tim, I mean, we've had them in the B2B space for a while, but if you reach out to the right people and the content is really good and thought worthy, they can be really, really powerful for brands. I'd say the last area, especially for B2B, is, we talk about the importance of content in B2B marketing. We then look at content marketing, and I talked about, blog, YouTube, podcast, but the other side are events. Now, with the coronavirus pandemic, obviously we've seen physical events. We don't, I was supposed to speak in Belgrade in May. They're delaying that till September. We'll see if that ends up happening. But obviously, even without physical events, we're seeing a flourishing of virtual events. And these are obviously, events are great ways to bring in influencers as panel moderators, as speakers, as promoters, as tweeters, whatever it is. They can add a powerful impact to your event. So I think those are the main areas that, if I was a brand, obviously, if you could do something experiential like, Adobe did, inviting influencers to the Adobe Summit, letting them interview the CMO, all these different things, that physical events become even more powerful. We can't, unfortunately, do that now, but I would definitely, if you're listening, start to think about that by starting with virtual events. Find influencers that really perform well, and really go from there. So hopefully that gives everybody a little taste of.
Yeah, it's really good, Neal. And I say in the book you do the different 16 different ways, and I think that gives people a lot of options. I still see a lot of people. I'll get the PR company contacting me, and it's like, okay, I kind of feel I'm going to say this now. Where's the romance in influencer marketing? There needs to be a little bit more one-to-one. If you want me to do something, then fine, it's great. But PR company. So
it raises the question that marketing has always been about one-to-many. Sales is one-to-one. And really, influencer marketing is a one-to-one. It is more geared towards PR, or in a lot of B2B organizations, we see influencer relations specialists popping up. But the problem is you can't treat people as programmable ad units. And this is what, even PR people are doing. And they should know better, right? Because if you were that journalist at the BBC, you would not be using the same cut and paste email to everybody.
No.
So, and that's the point here.
And so what about case studies? Where have people used it and actually got something from it?
Boy, they've used it all over. And, for every one of those different types of examples I gave you, there's tons of case studies, even just using influencer generated content for your, not just organic social media, which I think a lot of brands now on Instagram, they just post user generated content, but even in your advertising, should you do advertising, using content created by influencers, we've already seen across the board delivers better ROI. And now we're seeing actually using that content on your website, on your checkout page where your shopping cart is, having influencer images as well is improving conversions. So that's, that sample of just, using content. Obviously the gifting the product. There's been so many, just do a search for case studies. So one that I share is a company called Clean Plate, and it is a female bodybuilder, and she's always looking for good tasting protein infused food. And she wasn't really happy with what was out there. So she created her own protein infused pancake and waffle batter mix.
Wow.
And she decided to, on Instagram, reach out to bodybuilders like her, or fitness coaches, or people that would really find value in it, and said, hey, I'd love to ship you this product for free. I'd love if you tried it out. If you found it recommendable, I'd love to get a review. And that ended up being very successful, ended up getting, 4x sales 4 months later, double the website traffic, what have you. So there's a bunch of case studies, in the book. One that I like to share that really goes is aligned with my brand affinity model is a watch company called Rosefield. And this is actually not in the book because it's a newer case study that I found, but they did exactly what I talk about here. They looked for influencers in their customer list, in their Instagram followers. And what was the third one? customers, Instagram followers, and I think social mentions. And they decided they wanted to build an inclusive ambassador program that was open to everybody. Imagine that, instead of you imposing terms,
wow,
join us. And they had 3 different tiers. And this is where I give the example of the influencers being more of maybe the amplifiers of content, those with the greater following, but they also had those with fewer following that were most passionate, were more of the advocates that would bring new people into the program. And then they have a 3rd tier, and they activate these people differently throughout the year. It's a long-term program, but they also tap into these people for ideas about products, right? Or product names, or, who else can we invite to the community, what have you. So they become sort of this trusted network, and they found, incredible results, obviously, the ROI from working with influencers versus other advertising, they found a greater ROI, increases in sales, in conversion rate, in traffic. So I think when it's done right, it can absolutely be powerful. And you can compare it with other forms of marketing that you're already doing. And I think this is really important that you should do. But the other thing is that these are relationships that you're building. They become assets, and influencer content lives on, where your traditional ad campaigns, it's on, then it's off. That content, whether it's blog or YouTube or podcast or even Instagram hashtags, it can live on for quite a while, and it can impact a lot of people. And it's authentic. It's coming from a person, not a brand. It's going to get good coverage in the algorithm, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So those are just some examples. The Adobe Summit that I was invited to, I think the advertising value of the top 11 influencers that tweeted about it was in the millions of dollars. This is a case study in the book. So, there's just so many ways. The Roundup blog post and the ROI that generated of getting, dozens of backlinks and tens of thousands of new website traffic. We can just go on and on and on. So if you're doing this and you're not seeing that ROI, hopefully you'll read the book and you'll tweak things, because I do think those results are possible. But obviously results are going to vary according to the person, the program. But the more you do it, the better you get at it. And I do believe that regardless of your objective, that you're going to see ROI. That it's not a question of not getting ROI. The question is how much ROI you get, because you're hopefully working with people that already have some digital influence.
Yeah. Well, to finish off, Neal, one of the things one of the final chapters is about how to be a social media influencer yourself, and you mentioned that right at the beginning. And just give people that are watching, if they want to be a social media influencer, what's your recommendations on that?
Yeah, it's funny. I include that chapter, and I know there's a lot of people that are interested in that. And what I tell people to do is buy the book and reverse engineer. So we just talked about, what do brands look for? So number one, you have to have a niche. What types of brands would you want to work with? If you want to become an influencer, who is the ideal company that you'd like to work for as an influencer? And, what is your passion? What is your subject matter expertise? What is your niche? And from there, you obviously should begin creating content around that niche, and sharing content around that niche, and engaging with others who are also publishing content around that niche, and collaborating with others in your field. And over time, as you build up community and as you build up authority, you begin to become sort of a magnet. And at some point, I do believe companies start to reach out to you. But what's important here is, you're not going to I talk about reverse engineering, but you're not going to engineer this, because it has to be something that you're truly passionate about, you're truly an expert at, or you have a unique perspective on, because it's a long term. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It doesn't happen overnight. Tim and I have been doing this for a decade. And therefore it has to be a natural complement to what you do. And that's why a lot of people that have started their own businesses, like Tim and myself, we do really well, because this content creation is a natural extension of everything else we do. And perhaps I think this is even more important in the B2B space, right? Because information is so important. When several people are part of that buying process, you need to have all sorts of information at all aspects of the buyer's journey to be able to convince them. And that's why we regularly publish information. Without it, we can't get our own customers. But it also helps build our authority. So if you're in B2B, it becomes even easier. And, it's not a case study yet, but one of the clients that I'm a fractional CMO for, they're a B2B SaaS startup in the IT space. And it's, when you look at it that way, like, who the heck are we gonna, who is talking about, remote software development efficiency? And there's very few people talking about that. But if that's you, why wouldn't you be talking about it, sharing best practices, helping your company out even? It's okay to be an employee influencer. And that's really the secret to successful employee advocacy, is to have employees that are treated as influencers, that feel like they're influencers. So every influencer is a content creator, and that's at the heart of it. And whether it's podcast, whether it's YouTube video, whether it's blog, whether it's photo, whether it's story, pick your format, pick what you're good at, what you like doing, and do it. And you know what? It should be as self-satisfying to you in helping others as it is potentially making money. Because if you're just doing it to make money, it's probably not going to happen.
I've seen lots of people come and go over the last 10, 11 years. And I think some people don't realize the time and effort that's required in terms of creating content and creating good presentations and that sort of stuff. But everybody is an influencer, because, if you want to go, was it the new Ted and Bill and Ted film? You go to somebody and say, so what was it like? Was there a plot? And they'll say it was brilliant. You say, well, yeah, we probably wouldn't say that anyway. But everybody has influence, and it's really just a case of actually working on it. But it takes hard work.
It does. And just like collaborating with influencers, you need to develop actual human relationships, which takes time. Developing trust not just creating the content, that takes a lot of time, but then developing trust with people that have never known you through your content, that takes time as well. So, I'd love to give you a quick start program. It doesn't exist, and I'd be a sham. I'd be one of those shams on the internet if I said
you would. $49.99. Yeah.
You can buy my program.
Yeah. You said two things. One is, you got to get people to know, like, and trust you, and that's really important. And the other thing, to be an influencer, you said you need content and you need community, and the community is actually, if you're passionate about it, you'll find other people that have similar ideas to you that can become friends and collaborators of you. And that's the great thing. One of the things I love about social media is I've met so many interesting people.
Yeah, you need to want to serve people. And it's funny because with coronavirus, I've been doing a lot of presentations, and the first thing I say is a quote from actually an executive at Walmart, of all places, that says, "Business exists to serve society." And I think with the pandemic, we're all doing a lot of soul searching, whether we're a company or we're a person. What is my perfect job? What do I want to do with my life? Is this going to be the new normal? What have you? But it's really, it's really getting into your soul. Do you truly want to help people? Are you passionate about something that you'd want to talk about it and go out of your way? Tim, when I started with LinkedIn back in, I was one of the first 1 million members back in 2004. But when I really started getting going in 2008 and 2009, I was spending time in LinkedIn Answers, RIP, and answering questions. I was going into LinkedIn groups and answering questions. And I was reaching out to people and sending LinkedIn invites saying, hey, if you have any LinkedIn questions, let me know. I'd be happy to help you or point you in a way. I went out of my way to try to help people. And that's how you build community. I didn't realize what I was doing because I wasn't trying. We didn't even talk about influences back then. And because I was using it, I wanted to network. I wanted to meet more people because I knew from that there'd be more opportunities for lots of different things in life. So, you need to have that sort of passion if you really want to do it and be successful at it. And you're right, Tim, there's been a lot of people that have come and gone because they've seen it just as a way to, well, I'm just going to try to become an influencer to get my next job. Great. But what happens to your community when you stop blogging or when you're not active out there anymore? So there's a lot of things to think about, but it definitely is long-term. It's about the passion. It's about wanting to help people, and that's how you build the know, like, and trust, when you genuinely engage with and help others.
Neal, thank you so much for your time. If you haven't got it, it is his book, and I actually paid for this, by the way.
Oh, so, thank you.
I actually try and pay for the books, because being an author myself, I know that it's important that actually it's important to pay for stuff. And I also saying that because, full disclosure, it could be that people think this is an advert, and it's not. I read the book, and I'm actually saying that I like the book because I like it and I paid for it, rather than you sending it me and me saying I like it because you sent it me.
Yeah, this is a case study that I should have mentioned that I've been sharing, is the case study of my book.
Yeah.
I could have paid someone $10,000. I could have paid a celebrity to post a photo on Instagram.
Yeah.
Would that have really pushed sales of the book, rather than reaching out to other authors, other people that I know, people that have previously bought my books, people that pre-ordered this book and waited a year for it to be published?
I did.
Yeah. So
18 months, I think it was. It was the moment you announced it. You announced it. You announced it's on Amazon, and I bought it. And I think that was 18 months before it came through.
It was. Sorry about that. But
no, not at all. Don't worry.
Yeah, who are you? So it's a natural that I was going to tap into people that already knew, like, and trust me, to encourage them not just to buy the book, but to actually review it on Amazon, which is my key KPI. That's the number one thing, I think, Tim, as well.
Absolutely.
One of the top things you can do to help get your book discovered by others through the Amazon.
And anybody out there, if you want to help an author, write them a review on Amazon, because the Amazon has an algorithm just like anything else. And it's actually, the more reviews they have, the more books they sell, and the more you can help authors. And as Neal knows, we don't make any money actually from writing the books, but sometimes you get a check and you go, oh yeah, I might better buy the groceries this week.
There you go. Time for new shoes.
Yeah. Time for some new shoes. Yeah. So thanks, Neal, for all your help. And if you haven't got it, then please buy a copy of that. Neal, remind everybody where they can get hold of you.
Neal Schaffer, the real Neal, NealSchaffer on social media, nealschaffer.com, Maximize Your Social Influence podcast, and The Age of Influence at booksellers worldwide.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Neal. It's been so insightful and educational. And have a great day. I mean, I'm finishing mine, but you're just starting yours. But
indeed. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome. Hey, have a good day, Neal. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.